Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at some very fun battles in the Master Premier Cup, featuring a very cool pick, and that is a level 50 Shundo Tangrowth. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Dr. Stalemate, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, Tangrowth by no means is top meta in the Master Premier Cup, but what it is good at doing is defeating the many water types that do make Master Premier their home. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at a level 50 Shundo Tangrowth in the Master Premier Cup. Hopping into the first match, picking up a terrific lead, leading Florges into Chestnut. Chestnut does have a pacing advantage, able to make the Frenzy Plant before the Moonblast is reached, and they're going to go for the Frenzy Plant as soon as they get it. This is survivable for the Florges. Florges is going to let that through, and now we see a save switch into Waterfall Primarina, and Waterfall Primarina is not going to like what meets it, as in comes Shundo Tangrowth. Power Whip connects. Oh, the Primarina tanks that on 1 HP, able to fire off the Disarming Voice, and that is a very comfortable no shield by the Tangrowth. Back in comes the Chestnut. Unfortunately, Tangrowth's energy is going to be completely walled here due to the grass plus fighting typing on the Chestnut. So Chestnut will be able to use this as an opportunity to get a pretty sizable energy head start. Immediate no shield from the Tangrowth as the Chestnut will fire off the Frenzy Plant. They try for the farm down, but that does allow Tangrowth to make it to another Power Whip. The Power Whip will connect. We're now going to see a pivot back into the Florges. Florges will fire off the Disarming Voice. Disarming Voice will be shielded up by the Chestnut. And now do you just save 2 shields for Golisopod? Oh, we are going to see a shield by the Florges in the back. It's going to be a Dragon Breath Gyarados. And the opponent is not going to be too happy that they let the Moonblast through once they see it's Golisopod in the back. Because now, I mean, this is a health range where Golisopod can very comfortably handle it. And the Aqua Tail doesn't even KO. Even with the damage boost it got at the start of the season, Florges just too bulky, able to force the final shield. The switch clock just not yet up, but in comes Golisopod. Golisopod will be hit with the charge attack, and whatever it is, Golisopod can tank this. Opponent will go for the crunch. Golisopod does get debuffed, but it's still unfazed. Looking to farm up. Goes for the Aerial Ace, but actually loses charge attack priority. The Gyarados makes it to the Aqua Tail, and now the Golisopod should just be one off the next Aerial Ace. The Aerial Ace is going to pick up the KO. In comes the Chestnut, and this is massive overkill. Double super effective damage. Aerial Ace KOs the Chestnut and takes the win. In the next match, we see a very tough lead. Florges into Excadrill. The save switch into Golisopod is answered with a Gallade. That is not a Pokemon that I was expecting to see in the Master Premier Cup. Oh my goodness. Looks like Golisopod's moveset might change a bit throughout these battles, as now it is running the X-Scissor. There could be some situations where X-Scissor is helpful, but I think overall Aerial Ace is a lot more consistent because it does give you that super effective damage going up against the fighters like Annihilate, or in this case, a Gallade out of nowhere. Liquidation fired into the Gallade. Gallade no shields, barely hangs on. The defense gets debuffed, but it's not going to matter. Still able to force the shield from the Golisopod. Golisopod, this is going to be tough for the X to farm down. Yeah, they're forced to send in the third. They send in the Togekiss, and this liquidation landing means that now the Fairy Wind damage plus Moonblast should be able to KO this Togekiss. Back in comes the Florges. Florges firing off the Moonblast, just looking to continue to apply pressure onto the opponent. Moonblast will connect. It is just not enough to KO. The Togekiss barely able to hang on, firing off the Ancient Power, and now we see the switch. In comes the Excadrill, and it's answered with Tangrowth. Tangrowth basically taking up the entire screen. I can't even see the Excadrill. Oh my goodness. Tangrowth farm it up, tried to go for the Power Whip, but Exca will fire off Rock Slide number 2. And Tangrowth very comfortable absorbing that damage, going to farm up again. Unfortunately, the game lagging quite a bit there, tried to go for the Power Whip, but the game just said no. But the good news is it's just in a completely one position at this point. You can fire off the Power Whip, that will connect. Just going for another Power Whip, but at this point, the opponent just no longer has a win con available to them. They're just going to let this go, and that will be game over. Great leads return in the next match, leading Florges into Haxorus. Haxorus was once a dominant force in this meta, but unfortunately, it has fallen from grace quite a bit due to the fact that Breaking Swipe was nerfed. Opponent save switches into a Charm Primarina, and Primarina just getting absolutely bullied by Tangrowth. Tangrowth picking up the knockout with the Power Whip, and there's still quite a bit of health on this Tangrowth. Tangrowth able to outpace due to the overfarm, make the Rock Slide, and Rock Slide's going to do a decent amount to the Haxorus. Unfortunately, a couple bubbles were missed there, but realistically, you can just very comfortably no shield, just bring back in the Florges instantly, and just continue to apply pressure to this Haxorus. Haxorus still not yet able to switch. The Disarming Voice is reached. Opponent forced to shield if they want to preserve the Haxorus, and they do. Haxorus massively over farming. Oh, a beautiful catch by the opponent. They're able to catch the Disarming Voice onto Skeledirge, and Skeledirge sneaks the Incinerate as well. This should still be a win, but the opponent doing what they can to play out of some pretty horrific alignment. The Disarming Voice does get shielded. Very nice timing. 2 Shadow Claws in the move, and this Liquidation, you have to shield it or you get KO'd. The shield will be used. The opponent firing off more energy, and the final shield is used, protecting that Golisopod. Golisopod looking to overfarm and go for the Liquidation to guarantee the KO. Not wanting to risk Aerial Ace, letting them live on 1 HP, guaranteeing the knockout. Back in comes Haxorus. Haxorus has no big move to damage this. They're going to go for the Night Slash, fishing for the boost, and the boost does not happen. And Aerial Ace is going to be able to knock out the Haxorus and take the win. Moving to the next match. Oh, terrible lead. And this thing beats the entire team. Florges into Shadow Magnezone. This is an absolute nightmare. We're going to see a very nice catch onto the Tangrowth. You just have to hope the opponent is core broken and stays in, because this thing, oh my goodness, it is so bad for this entire team to see. And they are staying in, which is good. Tangrowth will fire off the Power Whip. The Power Whip does some very nice damage. Opponent going to switch out, sending in Annihilate. Annihilate, unfortunately, not what you're hoping to see. You'd much rather the Magnezone stay in, because the Magnezone's energy threatens this entire team. The opponent will fire off energy. Is it just going to be the Night Slash? Night Slash, I don't think will quite KO the Night Slash. Oh, it doesn't KO, but falling just short of making it to another move. In comes Golisopod. Golisopod will be met with energy from the Annihilate. Annihilate not going to bait. The Shadow Ball connects, dealing some pretty significant damage. Golisopod cannot get the farm down, forced to commit the shield. Golisopod trying to get energy to fight back against this Magnezone, but the opponent doesn't even have to send it in. In comes Gyarados, the switch into the Florges base, back out the Magnezone, but this Shadow Magnezone with shields to hide behind is incredibly scary in this endgame situation. They go for the Mirror Shot. That does so much damage to the Florges. They're already at another Mirror Shot, and realistically, there's just no path forward in this game. The Mirror Shot will connect, and they already have a third Mirror Shot as well. That's going to leave the Florges on very low HP. Florges will fire off the Disarming Voice, but unfortunately, yeah, there's just no way of beating this Gyarados. That Shadow Magnezone, sometimes you can get away with running very weak to a certain Pokemon, but if you end up seeing that Pokemon, it's going to be a very tough game, and that's exactly what we see here, as Golisopod is just going to concede the match. Decent lead in the next match. Florges into Gyarados will have to check their fast move. They switch out into a Skeledirge, and there's a great response available with Golisopod. Looks like Golisopod is back on the Aerial Ace, so it definitely looks like I do have the battles out of order, but that's okay. Realistically, the team of 3 isn't changing. It's just a slight variance in moveset. Going for the Liquidation. Liquidation does get shielded up by the Skeledirge. Skeledirge, this could potentially be a Shadow Ball, so we will see the shield. Opponent does full send the Shadow Ball. That's a very important shield to get correct. Golisopod will fire off the Liquidation. Liquidation does get shielded, but the opponent is just getting outpaced here because they did opt for the Shadow Ball. It is slightly worse pacing if the Shadow Ball does get shielded there. Back in comes the Gyarados. Gyarados, this is a situation where we actually see a pivot into Florges. Very interesting. Saving a Liquidation for later on the Golisopod, pivoting the Florges, and now Florges is met with the Excadrill. But with the Charge Attack loaded on Golisopod and a Tangrowth in the back, this is just a completely one game. The opponent does not have a way to win it at this point. Going for the Moonblast, losing Charge Attack priority. Drill Run, I think, will barely not KO here. It will be very close. The Drill Run does not KO. The Florges able to hang on, return fire with the Moonblast. That does big damage to the Excadrill, choosing not to throw Fairy Winds to set up farm for Tangrowth. And now Tangrowth in a completely dominant position. What is the Gyarados going to do? They can go for the Crunch, but this is not going to do a whole lot. They go for the Crunch. Tangrowth does not care. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We've got same leads in the next match, Florges into Gyarados. Again, it will depend on the fast move. Opponent is running Dragon Breath. They save switch into a Sylveon. Please tell me this is not Double Charm. Although typically you don't see Sylveon being played unless it is with another Charmer, as Sylveon is just really not an amazing fairy type. We're going to see the no shield by the Tangrowth as the opponent will go for the Psyshock. Tangrowth will be able to massively overfarm and fire off the Rock Slide. If the opponent wants to shield, they're going to have to double shield, so they are just going to let this through. But if they send in Gyarados, Gyarados is not going to have a good day against the Shundo Tangrowth. Tangrowth firing off the Rock Slide, that will connect onto the Gyarados. Gyarados looking for the farm down, but Tangrowth not going to let that happen. Going to fire off the neutral Power Whip instead. The Power Whip does get shielded up by the Gyarados, so Gyarados does exit with energy. Unfortunately, as the Florges gets brought in, there is one turn of lag, so the Fairy Wind does get denied. Florges farming up, not able to make it to the Disarming Voice. We are going to see the shield by the Florges, and Florges will be able to overfarm a little bit here, just deciding to get rid of the Gyarados. Just saying, you know what? I want Gyarados off the field of play. In the back, it's Primarina, and we knew. If they're running Sylveon, they're running Double Charm. And this Double Charm team is about to get absolutely destroyed. As Moonblast grabs the shield, we are back on X-Scissor on the Golisopod. And Golisopod will be able to successfully take this game. As Golisopod can just fire off these resisted liquidations, and they're just going to do enough in this matchup. So the liquidation is going to connect. Unfortunately, no defense drop, but the nice thing here is the defense drop isn't needed to win the game. So even without RNG, this is going to be a very straightforward game, as the liquidation will connect. Opponent able to make a last-second charge attack here. Disarming Voice will pick up the KO, but in comes the Florges, getting the Fairy Wind farm down, and down goes Double Charm. A familiar lead in the next match, and it's not a good one. Florges into Excadrill, choosing to stay in this time with the Florges. The farm up, the switch, and the catch, getting the prediction correct that the opponent would overfarm by 1, and catching the drill run onto Golisopod. Opponent is going to farm up energy and get a catch themselves as they catch the liquidation of the Gyarados. Opponent saying one good catch deserves another, but the liquidation does get the defense drop. That means 2 Aerial Aces plus the Shadow Claws will be enough to knock out, so the opponent will not be able to farm down here, and they can't even go for an Aqua Tail. They're going to be forced to go for a Crunch. If this is not a Crunch, they're going to have to give up a Shield or Switch, so they will go for the Crunch, and the Dragon Breath will be enough to get the KO. You can send back in the Florges now. Florges will be able to farm up quite a lot of energy. Opponent is going to fire off the charge attack. Aqua Tail, not a concern for Florges. Gonna bank 100 energy, send in the Tangrowth. In the back, it's Togekiss, and Togekiss is gonna have to deal with the fact that there's a Tangrowth up energy, and it's gonna be able to start spamming out these Rock Slides. Tangrowth, honestly, I'm surprised by the amount of bulk this Pokemon has in the Master Premier Cup. I was not expecting Tangrowth would actually get to this high of combat power. The Rock Slide will be shielded. Tangrowth going to commit a shield back, just trying to get as much value out of this energy as possible. Ideally, you would love to be able to do a nice combo play with a Disarming Voice from the Florges, and the opponent's actually just going to let this go. They're just going to preserve it all for the Excadrill. Excadrill in this endgame will go for the Rock Slide, and now it's up to Florges. Florges has 100 energy. Opponent still has the Gyarados, but it's very low HP. The Moonblast is going to connect. The question will be, is this now Disarming Voice range? This is not a range where Drill Run will KO. Drill Run will do quite a bit of damage, but it won't KO. Florges at the back-to-back Disarming Voices, firing off Disarming Voice number 1. Does the opponent try and go for a catch? They do not, and now they're getting hit with Disarming Voice number 2. Is this going to be enough to KO? The Disarming Voice does pick up the KO, and the energy management is exquisite. That game looked doomed, but it's a win. Great lead in the next match. Florges into Chestnut, and a Rhyperior save switch gets answered by Tangrowth. The opponent cannot be more hard countered than they are right now. Rhyperior goes for the Rock Wrecker. That deals massive damage, and we're going to see Tangrowth return fire with the Power Whip and pick up the KO. This does set up an opportunity for the opponent to get massive farm on the Chestnut. As we've mentioned, the Chestnut is a complete wall to energy from the Tangrowth, so the opponent will be able to use this as an opportunity. I mean, honestly, they could try for the farm down here, but I don't blame them for just firing off a charge attack, just saying, you know what, I can get energy, but I don't want to take any more damage. In comes the Florges. Oh no, the opponent just completely flipped the script because they have this team's biggest core breaker on the back, the Magnezone. Magnezone going to take quite a bit of damage from that Moonblast, and now in comes Golisopod. Golisopod commits the shield. It is the Wild Charge. Honestly, that's actually a very massive shield because you need to get the opponent to debuff themselves for these Shadow Claws to do any meaningful damage. Golisopod now in a difficult situation, going to be shielding up. The opponent baits with a Mirror Shot, and that means this is the Wild Charge, and that's game over. The Wild Charge picks up the KO, and now in comes the Chestnut. Chestnut, it saved all this energy from earlier, and now it gets to use it. Frenzy Plant connects. Florges does not have a way to win, and resigns the match. Hopping into the final match, leading Florges into Shadow Dragonite. Opponent save switching into a Dragon Breath Gyarados, so they do not have a response to a Florges lead whatsoever, as Dragon Breath Gyarados is a profoundly negative matchup. Gonna bank all the energy, and in comes Tangrowth. Tangrowth going to fire off the Power Whip. Power Whip, of course, only hitting for neutral, but it does get same type attack bonus. Opponent is actually going to be shielding up the Gyarados. They really want to flip switch, so they should have a very good check to the Florges in the back if this is how they're playing it out. The Crunch will connect, and now we're going to see the Rock Slide fired off by the Tangrowth. Tangrowth, Rock Slide, double shielded by the opponent. Can Tangrowth hang on here? The opponent fires energy, and giving a little bit of energy to the Tangrowth may be what it needs to get to a move. They switch out. They send in the Snorlax, so they save that Gyarados. They actually don't have a good response to a Florges, but now in comes the Florges. Florges firing off the Moonblast into the Snorlax, and the Moonblast gets the debuff. That's only a 10% chance, and now Florges will go for the Disarming Voice, hoping for the knockout. Disarming Voice does not pick up the knockout. The Snorlax on 1 HP makes one final charge attack, and we do see the shield on the Body Slam. Back in comes the Gyarados. Opponent desperately needing this Gyarados to get rid of the Florges because Dragonite has no way of doing so. Disarming Voice will connect. That will get the Gyarados low. Oh no, the low battery warning. Oh, that is not good. The Aqua Tail will connect. Is that going to allow the opponent to make it to a move? No, they switch in the Dragonite, and Dragonite gets outpaced. And this is going to be so long. Good night to the Dragonite. It gets KO'd. In comes the Gyarados. Gyarados gets Fairy Winded down, and Florges is able to secure the win. All in all, Shundo Tangrowth, honestly, I do respect the fact that even if it's not the most meta Pokemon, if you get a Shundo of it, it's definitely worth trying to max it all the way to level 50. It's definitely the way that I feel about Shadow Hundos as well. I have 3 Shadow Perfect IV Pokemon. I have 2 at level 50, and then the third one, the Ursaluna. As you see, I am currently walking in an attempt to get the XL candies to try and max it. So Tangrowth, definitely an interesting anti-meta pick. Like, the meta at the moment is very water heavy, and Tangrowth is very good at handling those waters, even if it's Gyarados, of course, still having the Rock Slide. So I do think that being this weak to Magnezone is definitely a bit of an issue. So unfortunately, if you see Magnezone, you're going to have a pretty tough day. But Tangrowth honestly held its own surprisingly well. I leave feeling a little bit surprised overall. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.